Okay, hello everybody. My name is Colleen Koth and I'm a economic justice staff attorney at Bay Area Legal Aid. I specialize in public benefits, in particular CalWORKs, CalFresh, and general assistance. This overview focuses on Alameda County for some of the benefits, but the same benefits are available in all counties in California. So in general, when you're looking at eligibility for benefits, you're going to be looking at both the categorical eligibility and financial eligibility. Categorical eligibility is basically asking the question, is this the type of person who we want receiving these benefits? So for example, this is where you might look at age, family status, who is in the family, whether an individual is disabled or maybe elderly, and then an individual's immigration status would also fall into that categorical eligibility. Under financial eligibility, you're going to be looking at income and any resources or assets that someone may have. The first program we're going to talk about is CalWORKs. CalWORKs is a cash assistance program for low-income families with minor children. The children must be minors. CalWORKs is intended to be time-limited, and it's intended to be a transitional program to move parents into employment. This is why you'll hear about employment services throughout the CalWORKs slides. The time limit right now is 48 months that an adult can receive CalWORKs. Children can always receive CalWORKs if they're financially eligible. You just have a child-only grant, and the adult would be excluded. There are some exemptions and extenders that can apply to make that time that the adult can be included on the grant longer. And there is a possibility that this will increase to 60 months in the future. Gavin Newsom just signed his budget, including a 60-month extension, but it's sort of in flux about when that might happen. Okay, so categorical eligibility for CalWORKs. The family must have both a caretaker relative and a minor child. And so the caretaker does have to be within a certain level of relation to the child in order for the family to qualify. The child must be deprived of support of at least one parent, and this means that the parent must be either absent, unemployed, disabled, or deceased. For unemployed, so you can have a two-parent household if one parent is unemployed. The parent who's the primary income earner has to be working less than 100 hours per month, and you still have to fall under the financial eligibility guidelines. Qualified immigrants are eligible, and there's certain non-qualified immigrants. The non-qualified immigrants would be like the PRUCL, TRU visa, VAWA recipients. PRUCL means presiding under color of law, so the U.S. government is aware that the person is here, and that does provide them certain eligibility for benefits. And then again, you can always have in California a child-only case. If you have a case where you have like a U.S. citizen child or a child who has a qualifying immigration status of some kind, and then the parent is a non-citizen who does not have one of those qualifying immigration statuses. So the financial eligibility for CalWORKs, you must be low income. And so there's a two-part test for qualifying. The first part is the bottom line of this chart. It's called the MIBSAC, the Minimum Basic Standard of Adequate Care. It's a level of income that the California legislature sets every year, stating that you are considered very low income in California if you fall below this level. So for example, for a family of two, which would be like a parent and one child, the gross income, so income before any taxes, any deductions, anything like that, has to be below $1,216. And then after deductions are made, the net income has to fall below the maximum grant level for that family. And there are two different types of maximum grant levels. There's an exempt maximum grant and a non-exempt maximum grant. The exempt maximum grant means that the family includes someone who is disabled or elderly, elderly meaning 60 or above, and that qualifies you for a higher grant. If you have if everyone in the household is under the age of 60 and is not considered disabled, then the maximum grant is that lower number. You also have to be low resourced. And the resource limits just recently increased as of June 1st of 2020. They used to be like $2,000 a month. Now you have to have less than $10,000 in resources, or if you have a household with a disabled member or a member who is 60 years or older, then you have to have resources below $15,000. This includes all bank accounts, retirement accounts, any type of financial asset that you might have is included in that number. The thought is that the government wants you to spend those resources down before having to apply for public benefits. There's also a threshold for car value. The value of your car cannot be above, the equity value cannot be above $25,000. So this is taking the fair market value of that car, like the Kelley Blue Book is what the county will usually use. And then they'll subtract whatever is still owed on the car. There are certain exemptions if that car is being used to, like, for work purposes, like say it's like a delivery van or something like that, or can also be exempt with certain, like, transporting disabled people. So if you have an issue where you're denied because of the value of a car, definitely reach out to a legal aid attorney and they can assist you with assessing whether or not that car actually should have been exempt. CalWORKs also has emergency assistance provisions. These will provide for immediate cash assistance. Usually a CalWORKs application takes 45 days to process. If you qualify for immediate or emergency assistance, the application will be processed in 15 working days, the full application, and it requires fewer verifications than the regular application for CalWORKs. And you can get either the full CalWORKs grant in 3 days if you are facing an eviction, and that's like the pay or quit notice usually is what the county will look at. Or if it's not an eviction issue, you can get $200 of your grant the same day. And in order to qualify, you must have less than $100, and you need to be in need of housing, diapers, utilities have some other type of, like, basic need that is not being met, like food, for example, or you have to have less than the rent amount and have that eviction notice. So like I said, there are welfare to work requirements with CalWORKs. So right now, because of COVID-19, they are granting a lot of good cause exemptions to this, just because how difficult it is for a lot of people to find work, or they're living with someone who may be immunocompromised or elderly. The county can grant exemptions to that as well. Here are the number of hours that you need to participate based on the age of the child and how many parents are in the household. And for a two-parent household, that 35 hours a week is combined between the two parents. It's not, so just one parent can work the 35 hours a week, or do 35 hours a week of qualifying activities such as like education or volunteer work a lot of times, or they can split it between the two parents. If a single adult has a child under 6, they're required to work 20 hours a week or participate for 20 hours a week. And then a single adult with no children under 6, it increases to 30 hours a week. Like I said, you are not required to participate if you have some kind of good cause. This is a temporary circumstance or event that prevents participation. This is where the counties have been granting the good cause due to COVID-19. There are also statutory exemptions that would allow for circumstances that prevent regular participation. These include like disability, and there's also a domestic violence waiver where if domestic violence, either past or present, is preventing you from participating fully in the welfare to work program, you can receive a waiver for those months. Here are some additional welfare to work exemptions. If you are under 16 or over 60, you are not required to participate in welfare to work activities. If you're 16 to 18, you can get an exemption for participating in school full time. If you have a new child who is under the age of 23 months, you can be exempt for that full 23 months, but keep in mind and advise any potential client that this is a once in a lifetime exemption. So for example, if you have a client who is a child who's 22 months old, you're not going to want to use this exemption. You're going to want to advise them to use it if they have a child who is maybe 2-3 months old, to try and maximize the amount of time that the exemption applies. If you're disabled, or if you have a family member who's disabled and they require your full-time care, you can also receive an exemption. If you are caring for a child who is at risk of entering the foster system, you can receive an exemption. However, this only applies to non-parent caretakers. It does not apply to parents caring for their own child. And then there, like I said, the domestic violence waiver, which does require a meeting with a social worker for the county. And then if you're in like AmeriCorps Vista or CalLearn, which is a program to get your GED or high school diploma, you can also be exempt. The next program is general assistance. In Southern California, this is called general relief. You're going to want to look at the exact regulations for the county that you are in, because this is a county-run program and it is not a state-run program. So every single county has a different rule and a different way that they assess whether or not an individual may be eligible for this benefit. It is an extremely low benefit level. And it's intended for people who are not eligible for any other program. So they cannot be eligible for like UIB. They cannot be eligible for Social Security currently. And the county will often require that people applying for general assistance or general relief apply for all other potential benefit programs that they may be eligible for. Like I said, it's an extremely low benefit. In Alameda County, it's only $336 per month for a single individual, and it's $548 per month for a married couple. In order to be eligible, your monthly income before any taxes must be below that $336 level. You must have less than $1,000 in assets. So again, if you have like any retirement account, bank account, savings, anything, the county is going to require that you spend that down before getting on to general assistance. You must live in the county where you are applying for 15 days before you can apply. In Alameda County, unless you are considered unemployable, which is generally disabled individuals, you are going to be limited to 3 months out of any 12-month period. So if the county finds that you can work at least 20 hours a week, you are going to be time limited. At least in Alameda County, there's a form that you can either take to your doctor and have your doctor fill it out and to declare that you're unemployable, or Alameda County has county doctors who are familiar with the general assistance program, and anyone applying for general assistance can opt to go to that doctor in order to certify their disability. Qualified immigrants are available, and again, some qualified immigrants, such as like T and U visa holders or VAWA recipients, may also be eligible for general assistance. Okay, so next is the CalFresh program. This is also called SNAP at the federal level, or a lot of low-income individuals in particular still refer to it as food stamps. That's what most people are most familiar with the term. This is open to most categories of people. This is by far the most expansive and far-reaching public benefit program, particularly in the time of a recession. And it is open to like families, single adults, disabled individuals, non-disabled individuals, seniors, just about anybody. In California, it is open to most most categories of immigrants. And if you aren't eligible for federal food stamp dollars, you can still get state funding, and it's on the same EBT card, same application process, same eligibility standards in terms of income. In order to be eligible, you must have a gross income within 200% of the federal poverty limit, and then a net income after a series of deductions, which we'll go through, within 100% of the federal poverty limit. There is a work requirement usually for CalFresh if you are considered an able-bodied adult without dependents. These are people 18 to 49 who are not disabled and don't have any children living in the same home as them. However, due to COVID-19 and the current unemployment rate, these work requirements have been waived by the federal government until June 21st of 2021 is what that should say. The waiver was granted on June 21st of 2020. So it's a one-year waiver. So there are some categories of people who cannot get food stamps. The biggest category that you'll see most often of people who are excluded from the program are certain full-time students. There are also fleeing felons are excluded, but there needs to be a certain kind of warrant out there stating that the police are actively looking for you. Most people, even like a regular bench warrant doesn't qualify for this. It's like a very, very specific type of warrant, and by and far, I found that if you have somebody who is a fleeing felon, they are not walking into a government building. So the definition changed. I know previously, maybe 10 years ago, there was a different definition that excluded far more people. But now it's a very narrow definition. And if you have committed some sort of like an intentional program violation or fraud, you can also be excluded from the program. And then you may have heard of people who are SSI recipients being excluded, but as of June 1st of 2019, they now can apply. And a really great resource from Legal Services of Northern California is like this full guide that cites to like all of the regulations for the state, cites to federal regulations, any type of guidance. It's located at calfresh.guide. If you just type that in, there's a full, all of the information you could need on the CalFresh program. And there's also a calculator that's available for download. Okay, so for CalFresh, in California, they apply this column called MCE for the vast majority of cases. It's the column to the right. So for this, the program they administer in California, your income, gross income has to be within 200% of the federal poverty limit, net income within 100%, and then your resources, there is no resource test. And that's the same standard for both general eligibility and for the elderly and disabled community. However, on occasion, you will see under this traditional form of CalFresh for elderly and disabled individuals, if they do have an income that is above 200% of the federal poverty limit, they may still be eligible for CalFresh if their income can be spent down to within 100% of the federal poverty limit through a lot of deductions such as housing, and they have to be low resourced for that to apply to them. The available deductions for dependent care, you get a dollar for dollar deduction. Anything you have to spend on childcare or care for anyone who might be elderly or disabled living in your household in order for you to go to work, which is the important part of that. But this can be a massive spend down, especially for a lot of people who fall into this like working poor category. There's the standard utility allowance. So if you're paying a single utility, you get a $432 deduction. There's a shelter deduction, which is, I find that almost most people in California qualify for the full shelter deduction of $559. It's a formula to figure out how much your maximum shelter is. But elderly and disabled individuals get actual costs deducted. There's also, if you have an individual who's a claim who's homeless, and they cannot verify their housing expenses, they can qualify for a $152 deduction. And then medical expenses are for anybody who is elderly or disabled, the care of those individuals. If they have more than $35.01 of medical deductions per month, then they get a deduction, a standard deduction of $120 worked into their CalFresh calculation. This includes like transportation to and from the doctor, any like vitamin supplements that a doctor has said that somebody needs to take, any sort of like incontinence products, anything that's not covered by Medicare or Medi-Cal, or yeah, Medicare or Medicaid. So it can be pretty easy to get to that $35.01. You just need to make sure you have actual receipts for everything. And then here's the maximum grant amounts based on household size. A household, it doesn't have to be like family members. It could be two people who are just roommates who are in the same household. So the maximum grant level is the absolute top of what you can receive. It can vary anywhere though from 100, for example, a family of one, it can vary anywhere from $194 a month all the way down to $16 a month based on this calculation that's pretty complex that goes through all of those deductions that I covered on the other slide. So if it seems low to you, it may not always be low, because the closer that your net income is to that 100%, the 100% of the federal poverty limit, the lower your benefit amount is going to be. In particular, we've noticed since CalFresh expanded to SSI recipients that if you are a homeless individual in California, for example, earning a full SSI grant of $943.72, and you don't have any verified housing costs and you don't have any medical expenses, it will generate a $16 CalFresh allotment. So just keep in mind, but if it does seem incorrect, you can always ask for a hearing and ask for someone to recalculate. And I just put this slide here because this is the most common group that you're going to come across who is not eligible for CalFresh or is excluded from their household. These are individuals who are enrolled half-time or more in higher education. They are not eligible for CalFresh unless they're employed for 20 hours a week. And that's either through regular employment or self-employment. And for self-employment though, they're going to look at the federal minimum wage times 20 hours. So there's a little bit more flexibility there, especially when you consider what minimum wage in California is versus federal minimum wage of $7.25. This is the biggest exemption, and this is the one that I find most often for my clients. If you are eligible for work study and you anticipate working, your eligibility will continue until it becomes known to the county that you have refused a work assignment. And it has to be known to the county because in California especially, there are very limited work study positions on a lot of university campuses. And those jobs can be very competitive, so it's far more likely that you'll have a client who is work study eligible on their FAFSA, but can't find a work study position for whatever reason, and they can still be CalFresh eligible as long as that work study is on their FAFSA report and they have not knowingly refused any position. And also, there is a new bill that just was adopted in California called SB 173, and it requires that, especially this applies mostly for community colleges, they have a list of employment and training courses that students can take that would then make them eligible for CalFresh. Okay, this is for all of the programs. Reporting requirements are incredibly important with a lot of these means-tested benefits. And that's because if you are over that income limit, the state can demand that you repay any benefits that you didn't rightfully receive. And these can be fairly sizable overpayments. It can take a while for the county to figure out that a client may have been overpaid, and sometimes they can total, thousands and thousands of dollars. In particular, if you look at the CalWorks program, because if you do go over that resource limit in particular, or if you weren't supposed to receive CalWorks based on the resource limit, you have to repay every single dollar of CalWorks that you received. So if there is any change to an income, there is something called an income reporting threshold that the county will send all recipients. However, I always recommend that clients report all changes to their income, either if it decreases, because then they may be eligible for more benefits, or if their income increases, I say report it just to be safe, because if it's not properly reported, then the chances increase that you are going to end up with one of these overpayments. And generally, these overpayments, or generally income needs to be reported within 10 days of when it's received, which is incredibly important because it can be very easy to miss that 10-day window. And also, again, another important factor is if anyone leaves the household in particular, I say that that's something that is better to report as soon as possible, because you'd rather be safe. That can change the total amount of benefits the family is eligible for very easily. And what is important to tell all clients is that the county is going to run something called an eaves report, where the county has access to all financial records that are linked to your Social Security, and they can access information on bank accounts too, and it will show any taxable income. And the county will request verification from the benefit recipient of this information. But if they don't respond, they'll start requesting verification from third-party employers. So if your client doesn't want their employer to know they were on benefits, it's important that they respond. And also, because the county can see everything in your financial record based on your Social Security number, they will find income you may not have thought they were aware of. And this can generate, again, overpayments that require to be repaid, which can be very difficult for people who are trying to access means-tested benefits. You have a right to a fair hearing anytime the county does anything that adversely affects your benefits. The county is required to send a notice of action anytime that it takes an action that affects the amount of public benefits received, even if it's increasing, decreasing. If it changes it by 1 cent, they have to tell you. And again, I said you can repeal any adverse action that you don't agree with. So this is any denial, if you're sanctioned, if you receive an overpayment, if they reduce your benefits, if they're trying to bring fraud allegations, you have the right to appeal that and have another county individual, another county representative outside of the eligibility team review the decision, or you can eventually go to hearing with an impartial administrative law judge. You must appeal within 90 days for CalWorks and CalFresh. In Alameda County, they give you 90 days to appeal a general assistance program change. However, a lot of counties have far, far lower appeal timelines. Most that I've seen are 30 days, but there are some counties in California where it could be as little as 5 days that you have to appeal for general assistance. You can have 180 days to appeal if there's good cause for having not requested a hearing sooner. This would be, for example, if they send notice in English and you've told the county that you don't speak English, and they've requested that you get notices in another language like Spanish or Chinese, whatever it may be. Or if you are disabled and you've requested an accommodation to like have someone from the county call and read the notice to you after they send it, that can be another reason for good cause. And you can receive aid paid pending, but you have to appeal before the action is taken. So if the county sends you notice on, say, July 15th, saying that your August 1st benefits are going to be terminated, you need to appeal before that action is taken in order for your aid to continue while the appeals process is going on. I took Social Security disability and took it out below the other state benefits, because those state benefits are administered through, say, like Alameda County Social Services or whatever your Human Services Department is for the county. Social Security disability is a federal benefit administered by the federal government. There are two forms of Social Security disability. There's Social Security Disability Insurance, called SSDI, also called Title II. This is an insurance program. It's not means tested. There are like no income or resource limits. This is so they won't look at like your spouse's income, for instance, or retirement accounts for SSDI. And it's because it's purely based on your own work history. You have to be either aged, blind, or disabled to qualify. It is linked to Medicare, and it is distinguished from SDI, which is the short-term state disability that you can apply for and receive far more easily than SSDI. Social Security income is also called Title 16. This is means tested. So this, you do need to be very low income and low resourced. You have to have less than $2,000 in resources for an individual, or $3,000 for a couple. And there is an income test also. For California, you receive $943.72. I believe the federal rate, you might see in other states, is somewhere around $777. Your SSI will be reduced if there is other income, including income from, let's say, your spouse, or if there is an immigrant who is sponsored. If their sponsor has income, it could also affect the total amount they're eligible for. Again, you have to have be qualified as age blind or disabled, and it is linked to Medi-Cal. Both of these have a very lengthy appeals process. Most people are denied at least once when applying. And this is where you'll see a lot of individuals who are on CalWORKS or general assistance while they're waiting for Social Security approval. It's proving the disability can be a very big hurdle for a lot of individuals. Social Security does have very specific immigration status requirements. So if you have some sort of, most of these at the top are refugees, asylees, individuals granted withholding of deportation. A lot of these are considered humanitarian immigration statuses. You'll see a lot of like Afghani and Iraqi special immigrant visas. Victims of trafficking can qualify for this, but it's only for the first 7 years of your status being granted. Lawful permanent residents with foreign work quarters, but you have to wait 5 years after getting your LPR status before you can apply. There are certain exceptions for veterans who, and active military who are applying for SSI, but they're using the military service in order to try and gain a visa. And then certain Native American tribes also have exemptions. And then immigrants receiving SSI prior to August 22nd, 1996, that's when Clinton's welfare reform went into effect. So if they've been receiving SSI since before that date, they can keep receiving it, even if they would no longer qualify based on the new rules. However, in California, we have what's called CAPI. It's the Cash Assistance Program for Immigrants. So if you would qualify for Social Security disability, but for your immigration status, you can get the same grant amount, $943.72, paid by paid by the state instead of by the federal government. You have to first apply for SSI and then get a notice stating that they are not eligible for SSI due to immigration status. And then you bring that to the county office and apply for CAPI. It uses the same definition of disabled as SSI, and it provides the exact same benefit allotment, but the difference is that you must recertify every single year. SSI has a longer recertification period. So those are the biggest benefits programs that you're going to come across in California and their eligibility standards. If you are in the Bay Area and you have a client who has any issues with their public benefits programs, or any of the other issues that Bay Area Legal Aid covers, here's how you contact each of our helplines.